Hey guys, before we start this video here, I just wanted to let you know that most of this video is me walking through my plots and showing you what all I've got out there, going through each hybrid and variety. And so I hope you enjoy it. If it's not something you're interested in, I just wanted to make sure to say, come back tomorrow. It's going to be a very good one. I did some stuff this afternoon that didn't make this video. It'll be in tomorrow's, and you're not going to want to miss it. So enjoy. Good morning. It's field day day. Got a nice sunrise. I am all set up here. We got some donuts, which I'm going to be eating the majority of, I'm guessing. So I'm all ready. I got the computer and everything set up there. We'll see if anybody comes and watches, and if not, I'll have myself a little donut party and watch the webinar myself, and then we'll go walk through the plots and stuff. So should be good. Weather's nice. It's going to be hot today, but that's kind of the nice thing about doing this first thing in the morning. It's like perfect right now, so good deal.
But the thing that I'm trying to wrap
Not a bad way to watch a field day. We're learning.
If 75% of our nitrogen is taken up after B10, we know that we're losing some of that.
Okay, well, good presentation this morning. Anna is here, and we're going to go out and walk through the plots, and I'm going to do a little for you guys. Talk about them. Here's a picture. In fact, I'll just put a picture here. I took some drone footage of it so that you can see some of the variation in it. See? Okay, let's go. Okay, so we're going to go through this, and we're not going to hit on every one, but I will talk about the ones that I actually know something about, and hopefully, you know, if anybody's interested, you'll learn a little bit about something. So we're starting on the full season end of the plot here. This 14 and 11, that's 114 days. So golden harvest numbers, the first two basically are the maturity. So put a 1 in front of that, it's 114. I know nothing about this because we don't plant 114 day corn. It's just in the plot. So we're going to move through these first few pretty quickly. This next one here is 13Z50. Again, not something that I plant. I don't know a lot about it, but I've heard very good things about this one from people that do plant it, and I know that it is a go anywhere type of hybrid that you can plant on a lot of different soil types and stuff. So something that we'll kind of touch on as we go through here, but some hybrids really like highly productive ground. Some of them can take stress ground, clay knobs, sand hills, stuff that's not going to produce as good. And some of them kind of can take all of that and will do well in any situation. So depending on the farmer that I'm talking to or selling to, kind of depends on or dictates which hybrids we pick and choose. You know, if it's somebody that's going to manage things and place hybrids where they need to be, then we can pick those ones that only work on this type of soil or this type of soil over here. But if it's somebody that just wants to put the corn in their planter and go plant it wherever it ends up, then you got to find these ones that can go across any type of ground and stuff. So once you kind of break it down by that, and then you look at your maturities and stuff, it kind of narrows down what fits on each individual farm. Okay, so 12U17, so 112 days about the fullest season stuff that we will plant. This is a brand new one, I believe, for 2021 here. Again, I don't know a lot about it. I was looking through some of the ears and stuff here, and the ones that didn't get deer damaged along the edge here, that's a pretty nice ear. It looks good. I know it's really thin there and stuff, and you get out in there, they're not all like this, but point being, it looks nice. This corn is not dented yet here on the full season end of things, so you can look at this a little closer, but you can see that the kernels are filled out pretty good, but there's no dents in it. When we get down on the early end of the plot, I'll show you the differences down there. But this is one that I believe is a go anywhere hybrid, and probably one that I will test on our farm this coming year and try it a little bit. So the next one here is this 12S75. So here's what I noticed at looking at this. And you look down the rows, Anna's my photographer today. Notice how upright those leaves are. They don't flop over. They're very upright. When it rolls up during the day here, because it's hot and dry, it kind of looks like a pineapple. Just the different plant characteristics on it. When I was looking at that drone picture, this one here stands out and looks really nice from the drone picture. That doesn't mean a whole lot, but That's what I know about it. Okay, so these next two we're going to talk about together because they're both new hybrids and they're both ones that deserve being talked about. 10L16, 10D21. We're both at 110 day here, so we're right in our maturity zone on the fuller season end of it, but stuff that can be planted here and should be planted here. So 10L16 is a hybrid that has very good ear flex, population flexibility. So when we say ear flex, that means that the fewer plants are out there, the bigger the ears are going to get. They're not all going to necessarily be the same size or consistent, which means you don't have to push populations quite so high. It works really good on all those variable soils. This one's a plant anywhere one, but I especially like it in the stress areas. It's got really good top end yield though, but it's also it's a high management corn. It's one that you know, fertilizer placement, split applying your nitrogen, adding a fungicide to it. Those are all things that are going to help really push this one. And if you can do that, this is going to be one of the lead products in our lineup. Now, as we talk about 10D21 over here, also has tremendous top end yield potential, but a very different hybrid. It does not have the ear flex. It's a determinate ear, which means the ears are going to be the same basically no matter what population you plant it at. And so we cannot plant this at low populations. You have to push it. When talking to my agronomist, basically the 10L16 is the hybrid that you plant anywhere 34,000 and under, and I would probably push that down to 32,000 and under. And the 10D21, don't plant it if you're not willing to plant 36,000 or at least 34. So you've got to have population, and the reason is because that ear is going to be the same size whether you plant it at 30,000 plants per acre or 38,000 plants per acre. So your yield is coming from the extra ears when you really push that population up there. Now that said, you have to be able to support that plant and do, you know, it has to have the agronomics to support those high populations, which 10D21 does. It has a very good root system. It has a very good stalk. It's not going to fall down when we raise those populations up to higher levels like we can see with some other ones. 10L16 doesn't have the root system that 10D21 does, which is a big part of the reason we got to keep that population low. What else on this one? So this one here, as far as placement goes, it's not one that you're going to put on your stress ground. It's not going to go on sand ridge. It's drought prone. It's not going to go on the yellow clay knobs. But where we can push it and your yield expectations are high, that's where to plant this one. This is one of the hybrids that I have in our irrigated field up there right now. So I'm pretty excited about it. I planted it at 38,000, 37 to 38,000 through most of it. And it looks really good. So we'll see what we get there this fall, but high yield environment where you can push the populations and really trying to push your yields. I did skip an experimental there because it's an experimental and I don't know anything about it. And one other note on our plot, and I've talked about this before, but it may not look super impressive. Like if you look out there and see all the thin spots, we had water damage and wildlife damage out here. The coon and the deer have destroyed this end of the plot. The coon much more down there in the early ones. And then when we got that 5.5 inches of rain there the second week of May, the water ran across here. I didn't bother replanting it because it's a plot and you can't really do that. So from a yield standpoint, not going to be super fair, but if you walk out in there into the stuff that didn't get damaged by the deer or the water, you can really get a feel for the hybrids and what they look like and stuff. So anyway, these next two here, we're at, down to 109 day. We have 09A86, 09Y24. These both have been out for 2 or 3 years now, and they were kind of the 10D21, 10L16s before those two came out. So they're older but proven hybrids. I know where they work and where they don't, and they certainly have their fit. 09A86 is going to be similar to your 10D21, higher populations. It's a little bit more of a fixed ear. It's got really good stalks on it. It's going to stay standing really well, and you can push this into your high yield zones. The 09Y24 is an Agrisure Artesian hybrid. It's going to handle the drought better. I've always kind of liked the 09Y24 better for our soils because we don't have a lot of 200, 220, 250 plus bushel ground, you know, year in and year out. And so this one fits better for us. The biggest problem I have with 09Y24 is the stalks are not great. So you have to harvest this one as soon as you can get to it. Otherwise you're going to be dealing with some down corn, which is no fun. Okay, So I just grabbed an ear out of this 09Y24, and if you look real close on this, you will see a few kernels that are starting to dent. A few up here. Not a lot of them yet, but it's just starting. So when corn is growing, you know, we start out at tassel and it pollinates, and then those kernels blister and they start filling out and putting the milk and the starches into the kernels. And then once the kernels reach full size, we sort of start, and it's changing it from that liquid milky substance to a doughy kind of consistency. And now we're going to start solidifying that starch into hard kernels. And so when that happens, it dents, and then we'll be able to watch, there'll be a line work down these kernels. You can't see it on here yet, but where the top of the kernel is then hard and the bottom kernel is still milky, or the bottom of the kernel, and it kind of it changes as we go towards maturity. Maybe we'll be able to see that in some of the earlier ones here, but pretty nice ear. You know, that's either 16 or 18 around. Nice, good sized kernels. The artesian trait in this, which is our sort of drought tolerance, should really help this hybrid this year. Our 108 days, and again, we have 2 of them. Notice the theme here, we got 208s, 209s, 210 days. It's right in the heart of my maturity zone, so I'm okay with having options here. This 08R52 is a new one this year. I've got some of it planted out in the field, but to be honest, I don't know that I've gone out and looked at it a lot. I did have just a little bit of it last year, kind of as a first try on it, and it yielded well. But if you guys remember me talking about last year and our conditions here, we were super wet early in the year, and we didn't plant anything until June 4th. Well, this was the hybrid I planted on June 4th. It was at our farm in Berkey, and it did mature, but it was super, super wet, like 32% in the fall. So jury's still out for me on this one. I haven't decided if it's going to be a good one for us yet or not. I'll know more this fall. But this 08M20, the one next to it here, so I have actually had this one. It's a year older than that one. I had some of it 2 years ago, had it again last year. I actually had it side by side with the 08R52 last year. And this was about 5 points drier, which for the same maturity to be that much different is significant. And the yield was just as good. So for whatever reason, this hybrid seems to have fallen out of favor with Golden Harvest. And that seems to be based on last year's performance. I don't know exactly. Maybe you guys in different parts of the country had problems with it, but it's been really good for me. 2 years ago when I first planted this, I had it against a 110 day that was one of my very best hybrids at the time. This smoked it by like 15 bushel. I was super impressed with it. So I planted a bunch of it this year. Maybe I'll be disappointed, but hopefully it's going to be pretty good corn, and we'll see. One thing to note on this hybrid, let's see if I can pull an ear real quick. It is notorious for having super ugly ears. Yeah. So normally we like to see nice straight rows, lots of them. This hybrid does this. They're just crooked, ugly. Why, I don't know. It's genetic. They've always done it. I've seen more straight rows on this hybrid this year than ever, but it's not hard to find ears that look like this. Still yields really well, so it doesn't bother me, but this is not one you're going to pick ears and take them to your county fair and win with. All right, so we've gone from our 110, 9, 8 day stuff, and then you'll notice the next one here is at 104 day. Now I do have hybrids that are between 104 and 108 day. They just somehow didn't make a plot with 25 entries in it. How, I don't know, but well, I do know. One of them is 07F23, and if you're at all familiar with our lineup, you know that hybrid because it's been around for several years. It's our old standby. It's very, very good corn, but we know it, so there's no reason really to test it anymore because we know exactly where it works and we know that it's really good. Another one that I really like is 06Q68. It doesn't seem to be a real popular one nationwide or across the whole country, but it works in our southeast Michigan, northwest Ohio geography. I've had really good luck with that. Last year in our super wet, weird, late planted spring, that 06Q68 was the best corn we had. It was running well over 200 bushel, planted in June. I can't ask for anything better than that. It was wet, but it was really good yielder. So, but we will move on to these 104 days here. This 04S19, quite honestly, I hate it. I won't plant it. It's not going to be something that I use on my farm, and the reason is because 2 years ago I had some of it in a field, kind of the pre-launch year where they gave me a few bags to test it. It got fusarium ear rot in it, and it was 45-pound test weight. It was awful, terrible corn. thank goodness we didn't have very much of it because I was able to blend it off and get rid of it. Now, if it doesn't get the disease, it may not be terrible corn, but it's not worth the risk for me. Now this one is 04G36. This is brand new. This is the first I've ever seen it in this plot. Look over here, Anna. One thing to notice right here is the split row. See this? It is short. See that one? It's not. There's a huge height variation in it here. So what I know about this is that it is related to that 07F23 I was talking about a little bit ago, which is one of my proven, very good performers, one that I really like. So when they tell me we've got a 104 day that's related to that, meaning it shares a parent, same inbred on one side, I like that. I actually like short plants because they tend to be very strong stalks and good stature where they're not going to fall down on us. So that doesn't bother me at all. We'll see. It looks promising. I'm pretty happy with the way that it's looked in the plot here, but we'll need to get into harvest before we really make any decisions on this 04G36. All right, so we're moving down to 103 day here, and this is starting to get earlier than a lot of what I plant. I did plant some of this 03R40 this year, and this is becoming one of my favorite hybrids, even though it is on the early side for me. I pulled an ear. It looks awesome. And yes, I know it's super thin right here, but I pulled it over here where it's not quite as thin. You can see that it's denting more than those other ones were, which means it's a little bit more mature, farther along in the process. Really nice ear. This one puts rows around. You're going to have 18, 20 rows around a lot of times on this hybrid. And the thing that I like about it is grain quality. So I don't know why, but, well, I kind of don't know why. I kind of do. Golden Harvest has this reputation for having light test weight corn, which I hate it when people stereotype entire brands by that, because you could see that aerial photograph or from the drone that there's so much difference in the genetics here. These hybrids are not all the same. They're not all related. So to characterize our whole lineup as having one characteristics or another it's inaccurate. But anyway, we have this reputation for having light test weight corn. This one here is going to be super heavy, good quality, high test weight, good color. This is a very good grain quality hybrid, and it yields better than the other 103 day. I don't think it's in this plot, but that I've been planting for a few years. So I really like it. I do know that it is not something you can put on your stress ground. It's got to go on some of your better acres and stuff. So it is a little bit of a placement issue with some stuff. But this is a good one. This is one that I used a lot for our replant corn this year because, one, it's an earlier maturing hybrid, and two, that grain quality thing. What we run into with June planted corn is it doesn't have time to finish, and we typically don't have very good test weight or very good quality. Case in point last year. So picking a hybrid that has good grain quality for that situation, it's at least a start, and it helps. Okay, so real quick on 02K39, as much as I like 03R40 for its grain quality, I hate this one because it doesn't have it. It's a really good yielding product. It's very good corn, but it's going to be light test weight. And I can't, for me, if I'm planting 102 day corn, it's either because it's really late and grain quality is going to be an issue, or it's my guys that don't have dryers and are going to haul it straight to town, and grain quality and test weight is going to be an issue. So I don't have room for something that doesn't have good test weight on the early side of my lineup. Just doesn't work for me. Anna would also like me to point out this smut. We've talked about this before a little bit, but that is, it's a fungal disease, and basically it's caused by the deer coming in here. They bit that ear off, they bite plants off, and then the smut gets into the plant because it opens up a pathway for disease to get in. So we're moving into the real early stuff in my plot. This 00H12 is a new one for me this past year. I've got some of it out in the field. I really like it from an early standpoint. It's got a nice ear type. It's one of them rows around, pretty decent grain quality. But it's just really early for me. So for the guys that are planting 100, 102 day corn, this has a fit. I don't do a lot of that, but we have a dryer. We don't need to have super dry corn in the fall. I want to push the yield as much as possible, and generally that's a fuller season corn. So, but it does have its fit. It's got a good ear type. We're gonna cruise right through this experimental that you can see the coon love it. I don't think I'm going to in this plot. I don't know much about it, but the coon have just destroyed it. Right here is the split though, and you can see there's clearly a difference in what they've done to that hybrid versus this one. I am excited to see this one. It is brand new for me at a 99 day. Don't know much about it. It's one of those with that very upright leaf that you'll see again, and looks promising. This is the first look I've had at it. I haven't got enough good information to really tell you much. And then we'll move down here to the last one in the plot, 95D32. Now I don't plant 95-day corn. I have one or two guys that do, maybe. That's why we put it in the plot. Plus it keeps the coon out of my other stuff, because again, destroyed. Just destroyed this plot. Is what it is. This is good corn if you have that fit for a 95-day corn, but that's north of where we are. I'm not going to plant 95-day corn in the field. So these three entries right here, these are not hybrid or not variety trials. This is a population study. And so I went through and I pulled an ear from each population. And Anna, when I'm pulling the first one, says, that one looks like garbage. Well, she's right, and here's why. So the one I've got here from down there was planted at a population of 27. Anyway, 27 or 28,000. That's this year. This one was 30. What do I got? Should have looked this up. 34,000. I think it was 28, 34. So not a lot of difference, but this one's a little bit bigger from the 28,000 than the 34, but not much. This one, whoops, was planted at 40,000, and it's smaller. It's not as long. A little bit more difference between these two than these two, but that's what we expect, right? So we planted it at different populations. Which one's going to yield the best? Is 28,000 of these or 40,000 of these? I bet this one wins. Some hybrids, this difference will be more pronounced than others. This tends to be more of a fixed year hybrid where it's not going to vary as much, but certainly did some. So pretty cool to see that play out in real life here. All right, so the next trials on this other side here are, I have a nitrogen rate trial and a starter rate trial. And there's not going to be a lot of difference that you're going to be able to see. They're all the same hybrid, except for in this strip right here. So Anna, look out in there. You guys see how brown it is? Yellow leaves, they're firing up the plant. Well, this strip I didn't put any nitrogen on. Well, other than what was in the starter, but I didn't side dress any with our anhydrous. And it's showing it. In fact, here's a drone photo, and you can see the yellow streak right here where there was no nitrogen. So as we walk down this way, and you look right here, here's the split row. This side got no nitrogen. This side got, I think, 125 pounds side dress nitrogen. Clearly a big difference in the color of the plant. We do still have some firing down there. It didn't get enough nitrogen, but it's better. So then we keep walking down here. Pit stop for this really nice here. That one's a monster. Look at that. That's what you get on the ends sometimes. Awesome. So, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So right here is the split between 125 pounds of side dress and 250. Now the dry weather is taking its toll, and we're still getting it burning up a little bit. But this one has not been shorted nitrogen. I'm sure if you walk out in there farther, you won't see quite as much of it burning up on the bottom either. But I know what happens when you don't put nitrogen on, but it's a dramatic visual to be able to show it. So that's why we do that. And then down here we have some starter rate trials. There's really no visual difference in those right now. And I did this last year, and the biggest difference that we saw last year was in the moisture of the corn. So it didn't impact yield a whole lot, maybe a bushel or two, but the stuff that we put starter on was 2 to 2.5 points drier than the corn that we did not put any starter on. So that's where it makes the difference for us. It gets that corn up and growing faster so that it starts progressing and going through its growth stages, which helps it mature and dry down faster in the end of the year. So, all right, that wraps up the corn. If you guys have any questions on any of those, type them in the comments and I'll answer them in tomorrow's video or in the comments or whatever. We're gonna walk down here and go through the bean plot now. Okay, we're gonna start going through the beans. And before we even start, there's a couple of things that we need to talk about. One, there's not as much difference in genetics in beans as far as physical characteristics that I'm gonna be able to show you as there is in the corn. Maybe a little bit of plant height difference, a little bit of bushiness difference, but we don't have the ear type differences and all that different stuff. So it may get a little repetitive here. The other thing is we need to talk about herbicide tolerance, genetically modified traits in soybeans for a minute before we get started. So There are a few different options as far as herbicide tolerant soybeans, but the two main ones right now are Extend and Enlist. So Extend soybeans are resistant to Roundup, glyphosate, dicamba, and nope, that's it. Extend is dicamba and glyphosate. There is an Extend Flex that are coming that are not yet approved, but we will have for sale when they are approved, that adds the Liberty or glufosinate tolerance into that. The other ones, the Enlist beans, those have resistance to the glyphosate, Roundup again, and also 2,4-D and Liberty. So they have three things that they are resistant to now. And so when I talk about those, I'm going to tell you whether they're an Extend bean or Enlist bean, but basically if you look at the last part of the variety, if it's an X, it's Extend. If it says E3, like that sign, it's an Enlist. We could go into details on one platform versus the other, but it's basically which herbicide and chemical program that you feel like you want to use on your farm. I highly recommend sticking to one and not mixing them, because that's where mistakes happen. But anyway, let's talk about the varieties a little bit. So we're on the early side of my plot, 2.5 beans. So again, the first two are going to be the maturity. Beans are not in days like corn is. They're kind of maturity groups. In our area, we go from a early group 2 maturity group to early to mid group 3. So 2.5, 2552X, this is new for me this year. I've got a bunch of them out in the field. I had them in the plots last year. They were better than my old 2.5, which I didn't care for. So pretty good bean. Again, there's not a whole lot for me to differentiate them and talk about why one is better than the other. So we'll go through them here. This next one is a new one for me. It's an Enlist bean. It's a little bit darker green color. I don't know if that'll show up in the film or not, but the Enlist beans, for whatever reason, tend to be a little bit darker green than the Extend beans. But the Extend beans tend to be maybe just a touch taller. I don't know. I don't know if that's just genetics or if there's something to the traits. Who knows? We are seeing a little bit of some pods hanging off the top of these here. That's good. We like to see that. They really need some rain, but can't control that much, can I? At least not here. So there's a few holes. We've got some bugs out here. One thing we will notice some differences in varieties is the shape of the leaves. These ones here are a nice, real long, skinny leaf instead of more rounded. Again, good or bad, I have no idea. It just is what it is. So we've got to hurry up. Anna's arms are getting tired. All right, so this one here actually does have something different that we can talk about. One of the common pests that we worry about in soybeans is soybean cyst nematode. They're a nematode that attaches to the roots of soybean plants and will suck the juices right out of the roots before it gets into the plant, basically. Is a pathway for a bunch of disease and things to get in. They're a problem. Well, there's genetic resistance that we breed into soybeans to be resistant to cyst nematodes, and 90% plus of beans use the same source of resistance that is starting to have not be effective, I guess, against soybean cyst nematodes. Well, this 2610 E3 uses a different source. It is a Peking soybean cyst nematode resistant source, which is good. They're better where we have heavy nematode pressure. However, Peking cyst resistance has also usually meant yield resistant. So it's not one that we would plant much of. Now that said, last year in the plot, this one really surprised me and it did pretty well. So we'll see what it does here. I did have a neighboring seed advisor down probably 30 miles southeast of me that this won his plot. And I'm quite surprised to see that. So, you know, we'll see. Looks good, but I'm skeptical because of that Peking resistance. So as we move on here, 2788. So one thing you will find is I know the Extend number is a lot better than the Enlist just because these are the ones that we've been planting and I know better. But 2788 has been a dominant yield bean in southern Michigan for the last 2 or 3 years. They won the Michigan State yield trials in 2018, I believe, and just have been very, very good bean. The one issue that I have with them is they are short. They don't get very tall, which if you have stress soils and stuff, that can be a problem because short beans are no fun to combine. All right, so 2818 E3, this is an Enlist bean, and I haven't planted them because we haven't planted Enlist beans yet. But from what I understand, this bean is as good as it gets in this maturity for Enlist. We've been, as a company, Golden Harvest has been really happy with this one. We push it pretty hard. I have a feeling I'm going to plant a lot of them next year. So they look really good out here. I've been happy with them all year. We'll see what they do in the fall as far as yield goes. And another thing to note, my bean plot looks a lot better and is a lot more even and consistent than the corn plot. So the yield data here is actually going to be useful. You know, the corn got hurt by that water and the wildlife and stuff. These didn't near as much. So we will be able to get some good yield data off of these when we get into harvest. This next one here is 2981. This bean tends to win my plot every year. It's been very good. It's a little bit taller bean. It's bushy. This is really good. Like, this is the one that we plant a ton of right now because it's been so good. That's what I know about it. Here's 3088. This one, when it came out, they told me it was very similar to an old bean, old 30V6 that we used to plant that I really liked. It's never been quite as good for me. I don't plant a ton of them, but a few here and there. Has pretty good phytophthora resistance, which has been an issue this year, so maybe this is their year. They look really good here. They're nice and bushy and filled out the rows better than this one next to it. This one is a 3152 E3 Enlist again, and again, we'll see how they do. I think that between this one and the 2818s, that's where most of my Enlist sales are going to go. But as we move on down here to this next one here is, so the 2981s tend to win my plot every year. The 3195 is consistently the best beans that we plant in a field situation every year. Why, I don't know, but they work really well. When I'm placing hybrids and varieties in the winter, you know, trying to figure out where I'm going to plant everything, I always put this one where I expect the highest yields because it has the best yield potential of anything we've got. I really, really like this one. If we switched from Extend to Enlist next year, it's going to hurt me to not plant this bean again. So we've got two more in here. 3347X. This is brand new for me this year in the plot. I've never seen them before. We had an old 3324X that I was pretty happy with. Had been pretty good. This one replaces it. We'll see how they do in the plots this year. And then we have a 33 Enlist, the 3380s. We're on the getting to be on the full season end of what we'll plant, and a lot of my growers will plant, so I don't deal with these quite as much, but they are good options here, and we'll see what we get out of yield on them. Okay, so we've moved out of the variety trials, and now we're into seed treatment trials on these next few here. And while you're probably not going to be able to see a lot of difference because they're the same variety of bean, there's no genetic difference. The only difference was in that treatment that we put on the seed. And so I don't know that you'll really, like I said, be able to see anything, but I can talk about what the differences is. This first 8 rows here is the Saltro treated beans. Now, Saltro is Syngenta's new seed treatment that is for sudden death syndrome and helps with soybean cyst nematodes. Remember, I talked about them earlier and having genetic resistance. We can also add a seed treatment to help protect against nematodes as well. So Saltro is top of the line. It is a premium seed treatment. It's expensive, but if you have issues with SDS, with nematodes, this is the seed treatment to use. The ones next to it here are actually a competitive seed treatment to the Saltro. So what we did was we took beans, same variety of beans, we put the base treatment as the same, Cruiser Max Vibrance, and then one set got the Saltro, the other set got a product called Elevo. Now, Elevo's been out for a few years. It is also for nematodes and sudden death syndrome, and it works. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it doesn't work because it does. But what we found is that it actually will hurt the beans early in the year in the absence of nematode pressure. And so, well, even in nematode pressure, they still are going to hurt the beans. You get what they call this halo effect on the cotyledons. And I showed this in some videos back when that was happening. I'll throw some pictures up right here, and you guys can see that the one beans have this brown edges around some of the cotyledons and the leaves coming out of the ground, and the other ones don't. And that's the difference between the Saltro and the Elevo, and why we think Saltro is a better treatment.
All right, plug yourself here right now. Can you do this treatment?
Absolutely. So I have a seed treater, as you guys saw earlier this spring. I do treat beans with Saltro, and we have that option and available to anybody that wants to try them. And I encourage side-by-sides. I mean, split fields. do the testing.
Hit them up.
All right, so we do have 2 other seed treatments out here. So we've got the Saltro and Olivo. Those were kind of the point of this and comparing those two. We also have the same bean treated with just the Cruiser Max Vibrance, so the base treatment that's on the rest of them without Saltro or Olivo to get that comparison. And then I put in 8 rows of completely untreated beans, just naked soybeans like you would harvest in the fall. So again, very little visual difference. There may be some canopy closure differences, but not anything that you will be able to see on film, I'm sure. So as we move down here, we have our population trials, basically the same thing I did in the corn. Not this one, next one here. But we planted our soybeans at different populations. I did 120,000. This next strip is at 160,000. And then the one down there is at 200,000 plants per acre. Basically just trying to get a feel for what the best population to plant is. These were planted earlier, first week of May, so usually the earlier we plant, the lower the population you can plant, and also they're 30-inch rows. Wider rows, generally you can plant lower population as well. So I expect the 120s to actually be the best here. Soybeans are kind of the opposite of corn. Corn, we try and get you to push populations as high as we can go. Soybeans, we're trying to get you to back off of them a little bit because generally guys plant too many beans per acre. You know, used to be planted 180 to 200,000, and we're finding that that's too much now. So in 15-inch rows on our farm, we plant about 160,000. Okay, so the last, well, not the last, but one other thing that we're going to talk about here, and I've talked about these throughout the year. These soybeans are my early planted soybeans, and Annie, you're going to have to get a little closer here. But I planted this row of beans on March 17th. So that was a month and 2 weeks before, well, a month and a week before we planted any other soybeans. And on about the 6th, 7th of May, we had a hard frost, got down to like 26 degrees according to our weather station that is directly on the other side of this field. They lived. I can't believe that they lived. They were just starting to poke through the ground at that time, so you know, shocking. But look at the pods on these things. Look how many pods are on each node. They are stacked together. The pods are overlapping all the way up the stem. We've got 4 bean pods up here. I mean, these things, for as dry as it's been, they look fantastic. This row over here was planted on April 4th, I believe. And I cannot say enough of how much of a success this early planted experiment was. Now, nobody here plants beans in March. Nobody plants anything in March here. It's too early. We know that. Or do we? I'll tell you what, I'll try it. If I get an opportunity, I will absolutely try it. The problem is usually our ground is not fit to have equipment out there in March. So given the right weather conditions, I will absolutely try and plant some beans in March. You know, I'm not going to do 500 acres, but I would do 5 or 10. All right, last thing we've got to talk about in soybeans here is I did these 3 strips, and it's a sulfur trial on soybeans. So I put some ammonium thiosulfate, which is 12% nitrogen and 26% sulfur in the starter. And we're just trying it to put a little sulfur down. There's been a lot of research coming out of some of the universities, Purdue especially, saying that sulfur on beans has some pretty big benefits and payback. So that was kind of the point here, was to experiment and see what happens with it. This strip did not get any. The next middle strip there got 5 gallons of ATS per acre. The far one got 10 gallons of ATS per acre. So no real visual difference there. We'll see when we get to yield whether they did anything or not. So anyway, that's my plots. I hope you guys enjoyed this little walkthrough. I'm sure that was long, and that's probably going to be most of today's video because I'm sitting around waiting on people to walk through and do that normally, or in person, I guess. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about what we've got out here. Some of these new corn hybrids, those 210 days, look really, really impressive. And you know, we've got a lot of options with beans. We do also have a different trait package on beans that I didn't talk about, the GT27s that are resistant to Roundup and Liberty. So we have all kinds of options within our lineup that I can fill pretty much any need that we have. So just real quick, I'll plug my seed business. If anybody is in the general local Northwest Ohio, Southeast Michigan area and you're interested in talking about seed, reach out to me. You can find my email address pretty much anywhere if you look for it, and I'd be happy to come and talk to you about it. But that's what I've got for the plots here today. So hope you enjoyed that. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap it up here. It's, what time is it? 5:24. So I'd like to thank everybody that came out to my field day today, which was Anna and my dad. Total bust today, but that's okay. I really didn't expect a lot of people. I didn't expect hardly anybody for the meeting this morning because the timing was just off. 8 o'clock in the morning to get guys here is not going to work. I did think a few people would come to walk through the plots throughout the rest of the morning and the afternoon. Didn't happen. It is what it is. That's why I didn't spend a lot of time and effort and money into this, and you know, the cleaning that I did yesterday needed done anyway, so no big deal. I hope you guys enjoyed the walkthrough in my virtual field day that I did and plot day. That was kind of good to go through and share that, and hopefully a few people will at least watch it. So yeah, anyway, have a good night. Hit that like and subscribe buttons for me, and if you have any questions and comments, leave them down below. I did do a few things this afternoon that I'm not putting in this video, but trust me when I tell you, you are not going to want to miss tomorrow's video. It is going to be very good, and if you follow me on Instagram at Borderview Farms, you will have seen a sneak peek. It's a good one. Come back tomorrow. Have a great night. See you guys.